Acumen means the skill of making good decisions and correct judgments. It usually comes with years of experience and is limited to one's own field. But what if we could improve our acumen in key areas that usually take time, such as business and leadership, by learning from others? That's where this talk show comes in. Listen, learn from, and be inspired by C-suite executives, founders, and other leaders who have been where you are now before. I'm Dror Wayne, your host in Tel Aviv, and this is Acumen. Welcome back to Acumen. Today I'm joined by Jonathan Harel, one of the co-founders of Fine. And we're going to find out a little bit more about what Fine does shortly, because it's best that he tells you and not me. We're going to be discussing today what makes good business, how they make decisions, why Fine has chosen to put a real emphasis on revenue building at the moment rather than fundraising, their journey from dark mode to Fine and listening to the customers, and about how Jonathan's own perspective as a tech person in the marketing side of the business can give insights to a variety of different founders, business leaders, and cross-functional teams. Jonathan, thanks for joining me today.
I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to be here in Tel Aviv, your hometown, where even though we didn't meet here, we met overseas.
Yeah, we met in Barcelona, actually.
And I just knew that you were going to come and one day have some cool business, and I'd one day want to interview you, and here we are. So first, as it's not my area of expertise, can you give the 30-second pitch of what Fine is so that people know what we're talking about?
Yeah, sure. So Fine is the home of the virtual developer. Basically, once artificial intelligence became good enough, you can now work with it just as you would talk with a normal person. So imagine a virtual developer. They build software, they know how to take tasks end to end. You just give them the business requirement and they deliver the pull request, as we call it.
So I've already heard the incredible story of how you got to Fine and you built this business based off of dark mode. Dark mode being the show you had beforehand. Can you tell everyone else who hasn't heard about that? What was dark mode? Why did you have that idea? And how did it lead you to creating Fine?
Yeah, sure. So 2 years ago, I met my co-founder now, Dan, and we bonded and we found out that we both like tech, we both like, web series, we like this type of content, we like dealing with developer experience, and this whole world is very interesting to us. And we said, hey, you know what, we should produce a web series about it. We can do it here. Israel is like one of the largest tech scenes in the world. It must be very interesting to talk with the R&D experts of this place. And we went out and got 8 of the biggest tech companies in Israel to fund this web series, actually, like Wix, Taboola, AppsFlyer, AI21 Labs, which are now making headlines. They funded this web series in which we produced like a docu-comedy about the state of developer experience. And we went out, we interviewed the R&D execs from the developers in the trenches to the VPs and CTOs. We talked with everyone for, I think, more than 100 hours in total. And after 100 hours of interviews, we had a pretty solid knowledge of the state of software today, of the state of developer experience. So we were able to transcribe all of these interviews, boil down, and find the essence, the problems that are really like slowing down the development today and how we can make an impact in the future. So that's what gave us the idea for Fine. We realized where we are at now and where is the future headed, where are we headed into in the future. And that's how we set off to build Fine.
So when you look back now, considering the product as you know it and what you're building, what was the earliest point at which you knew that this was the direction you were going? Over those 100 hours, was it after 20 hours, 40 hours? When did you get the idea of the thing that you've got now?
So even though it was very tempting, while we were interviewing people to say, this is it, this is the problem. They just said it, they said the thing.
Right, because I feel that's what a lot of people do in market research. You get a focus group, 10 people together sitting around, and you say, what would you like us to solve in this? And then you jump on that and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very tempting, but we realized that, okay, maybe this week, this person had a very critical issue with this system, and, they are shouting it out. But we will only be able to work on something very beneficial or very impactful if we try to look at the underline of what's behind everything. How do I phrase this?
What's between the lines? What are they not saying?
Yeah.
So you're kind of trying to understand the customers, but not believing every word they say.
Exactly,
right?
Because we thought we need to look for the pattern rather for the single point of information. We need to look at all of the interviews together and say, hey, you know what, this and this and that, maybe they are not exactly related, but if you solve something earlier, then the three of them benefit from it. So we were trying to look for the pattern.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you think other businesses who maybe don't have the backing of all the biggest tech companies in Israel can go about listening to their customers in that way, or listening to their target audience? Because you knew what your target audience was being. You knew that was going to be something in this industry, because that's what you were passionate about, and you knew there would be an opportunity. And you were very lucky in that well, I don't know if it was just luck, but you had the opportunity to bring in other players who invested money so that you could produce this series. And that series gave you access to many, many different people and their opinions. For someone who doesn't have that, whether it's a SaaS founder with an idea for an app, whether it's a bar on Dizengoff who wants to be more like what their customers want, who wants to solve a different problem, how do you think they can go about getting that information? And as you say, not just the thing that the customer says they want, because you had many conversations with people complaining about a specific problem, but identify the patterns behind them.
So I think one excellent way is just to be the customer yourself. You know, me and Dan, we are both tech people, so we were able to quickly validate or unvalidate some ideas that we had, saying, this is not a big problem. We know it. We faced it. So if you are your own customer, in a way, if you're working on a field where you can be the client, then you know what you need. You can get the fastest feedback for your product or for your idea. And the second thing is that I would say, just reach out to them. You know, people are more responsive than we think. We sit in our room. You know, I think one of the first tips for entrepreneurs is get out of the building. I don't sit in your box. Go out and talk to your clients. And most people are very responsive. They would help you. And sure, they would say, you know, they would give their own agenda. They would give their own twist on the things. But if you do it with enough people, you will find the pattern. So just go out, get out of the building, talk to your clients.
I definitely agree. There's a few important things you said there. The first is, a lot of people seem to have a tendency to think, okay, I've had a specific experience, so I want to solve that problem. And in some ways that can be great. That is definitely the first step. But your own experiences are one person's experience. Getting out and speaking to more people is so important. I speak to a lot of people who, if they don't know of something, they say it doesn't exist. This is a phenomenon I found particularly in Israel. Someone hasn't found this service or option or never heard of it themselves, or they don't provide it, and they'll say, you won't find that here. No, our way is the only way. We know best. I can go on Google, mate. This isn't 1905. I can go on Google. I can find someone who will do it. Someone's doing everything. There's nothing new under the planet anymore. So getting those different experiences from different people is very important. As I also think a lot of entrepreneurs do fall into this trap of, okay, this is my bad experience. This was a problem that I had. I'm going to solve this problem. This is my dream. They pour loads of money into it, and then they're like, why is no one coming and buying?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
It's the bar on Dizengoff. Yeah, we're going to open a great bar. Has anyone said they want your interesting concept?
100%.
I don't know. And then 20 friends come and they open a bar together. This is the example I love using because it's so classic. And everyone owns a little bit and they put more and more and more money in, but the business isn't there. The revenue model isn't there, maybe because they're not close enough to the customers in some ways.
Very possible.
And that brings me on to my next question. What makes good business?
I try to think what makes a good business for me as a client.
Okay.
Which businesses would I point to and say, this is great, this is amazing? And I think the best businesses I had interactions with are the ones that I tried the product and I said, wow, thank God that this exists. When the first time you're using Waze and you see that you saved 15 minutes, driving to wherever you needed to get, you're like, wow, this is great. Thank God. This is amazing. And my life is so much better now. And I think there are many businesses like that. So for example, let's take the bar on Dizengoff. I wouldn't say that many clients are like, wow, thank God this bar exists, unless there's something very special about this bar. But if there's like a special cocktail place and you are a niche person who loves the cocktails with whiskey or whatever, and you find this place that makes, with the specific bottle that they import from Scotland, and you're like, fantastic, thank God that this place exists. So it can be brick and mortar and it can be digital, but if your clients are really thankful for what you're selling, that's good business.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Really, you want the customers to be really thankful for what you're doing, because I've had a lot of discussions about the difference between a nice to have and a must have. Because in the B2B world and in the SaaS world, we usually hear things like, what is the problem you're solving? And some businesses don't solve a problem. My bar doesn't solve a problem. My business, in England doing the magnets, doesn't solve a problem. It's a nice to have. It's lovely. Some people like it. Some people don't like it. If you don't want it, don't pay for it, is what I tell people. But some people really want it and they'll find the money for it and they'll pay for it. And yes, it's much easier to define a sales narrative and to create good marketing if you're solving a problem, as everyone says in the SaaS world, which puts you in the kind of the must-have. You want to solve a problem, be so significant that the customer's like, I couldn't live without this. When we didn't have Waze for the first few days of the Swords of Iron War, and driving around, you didn't know where you were because it wouldn't show you your location, because Waze and Google had to turn these things off because of the fact that it was being used by terrorists. But we realized how much we miss it. You only miss the sun when it starts to snow. How does the song go? Yeah. So it's that difference between nice to have and must to have. But then the question is, how do you sell a nice to have business? Because there must be a place for a nice to have business. And so what you're saying, I think, is that it can be nice to have, but the customers should really be grateful.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Maybe this can give a twist on it. So let's take, for example, an application for sharing your screen or sharing your remote access to your computer for whatever. So I can, for me as a tech guy, this is a nice to have because I can find 100 other ways to work with my colleagues about a specific problem that doesn't require actually sharing access to my computer. That's nice. But when I'm talking with my mother on the phone, she's almost 70, and the computer is doing this, it's doing that, it doesn't let me, it won't
Mom,
open.
Let me log in and I'll do it. Okay?
Yeah, and I just want to say, just click the green button in the center of the screen, and she's like, which button? And you understand now that I'm at a point where I would happily pay to get remote access to her computer right now. So even if you have a product that's nice to have to someone, it might be a must-have for someone else.
Right. It's like I could go down to any one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of restaurants in Tel Aviv when I'm got my craving for falafel. I don't need Wolt or 10bis or whatever it is, or Deliveroo if you're overseas, or Uber Eats, to press the button and have it delivered to me within 20 minutes. It's a nice to have. But I can be so grateful for it sometimes when it's raining and I don't want to go out or whatever it is, and you can't be bothered to cook. Or you're missing one ingredient, you're in the middle of cooking, you use one of these apps, Yango Deli, and the delivery guy turns up with another bag of flour. He's saved my dessert to take out to the dinner party. It's a nice to have, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah,
that's a really important message.
I think also if you really figure out who's the crowd to which this is a must-have, then your marketing becomes very easy because you can target them with their needs. You can talk directly to them, showing them their pain point. Right? If somebody would target me with an ad for, is your mother stuck on tech stuff? Then I would be like, yes, slam the button, boom, buy. Right? So you need to find those people, and then marketing becomes easy. Everything moves quicker.
I think your mum's going to watch this episode, so you need to tell her that you love her.
I need to help her watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next question I want to have, actually, it's interesting you mentioned marketing, and I knew we'd end up talking about this. You're a tech guy. Your degree in Harbor Space in Barcelona was, remind me?
Computer science.
Computer science. Classic programmer, you could be computer geeking away all day long. But here we are talking about marketing and pain points and things like that. How do you balance these two things, the creative side and the tech side? And how do you balance it as a co-founder? How do you split your time and your resources and when I say resources, your mental energy and capacity to think between the marketing side or the sales side, the revenue overall, and the tech development product side?
So I think I try to strike a good balance that also makes me happy. But as a person, I really like to deal with the people side of things a bit more than just the engineering. So to me, moving to marketing was a very smooth transition, specifically because marketing to developers is very different than normal traditional marketing, right? Developers are a specific persona. They're usually grumpy. They usually do not want to hear about your product. They don't want it unless they really, really need it right now. They have this problem that they've been working on for 18 hours. They're stuck. Just give me something. Right? So marketing to these people looks a bit different. And coming from the field, you can really understand how do my colleagues think? Where do we see ads that we are like, hey, this is pretty good. We need this. This was This was not shoved down my throat. And I think many businesses also understand that when you sell to developers, you can't come from the top. You can't come from the VP R&D and say, hey, now everybody has to use this. Unless it's like a security thing, which is a different thing. But developers like to choose their own tools. They like to be able to control their flows and their workflow. So to market to them, you really need to think about how do they perceive things. And
yeah, I think many people actually, in many cases, people want to choose the tools that they need for their own functions. Ideally speaking, if you were a sales guy on the road, driving around to meetings and you get told you get a company car, you'd want to choose your own car. Sometimes you do have to then find that person and turn them into a champion. So they go to their manager or their CEO, whoever it is, and you have to market to them well enough that they will then go and sell it for you, which itself is a challenge. We don't have long left. I want to ask 2 more questions. The first question is, how do you make decisions?
It really depends on the type of decision, but we usually really, really try to understand where can we get the best data to make this decision upon. So it can be qualitative by going out and interviewing people like we did with dark mode, maybe. And it can also be quantitative. So if we have 400 users and we just ship, like a Google form or something, and we kind of get the responses or the median response or whatever, then we really try to make it like this. But the first thing when we need to make a decision, the first thing we ask ourselves is, where do we get the best data to make this decision based on?
So you've got that data in, and only then do you move on to the decision.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take you to process data? Can you look at the answers and get okay, I've got the idea, this is what we're going to do? Does it take more of a team discussion?
Sometimes it's a clear cut. Sometimes it can be a 3 months journey to collect the right data.
I see. And why is it, on the topic of decisions, that you told me in a recent discussion, you're making a big focus on revenue. You're out there looking for customers, bringing in money from people paying for the product, as opposed to doing what all the other startups in the world do, which is chase round after round after round of funding. So why aren't you looking for funding as much as I presume you are as well, but why is your main effort currently on revenue?
So I think once we figured out, hey, listen, we have a real problem over here and we have the crowd that they really need to have this thing. It would really help them. They would be thankful to use this. Then we started selling. We saw that sales are going pretty well. And we figured, hey, these clients, they are focused on now. They are looking for solutions now. While most VCs or investors, they are looking like 10 years into the future. They're trying to imagine what will be. It's a much more difficult question to them to decide whether they should buy in or not. To the client, it's like, my code base is on fire. Give me something. Just give me something now.
So satisfying a need is easier to sell and bring the money in.
Yeah. And
you think that's going to give you the growth potential that you want?
I'm pretty sure. We hope so, of course. I would say that maybe there are other personas of founders. Some founders would probably find it easier to sell a dream rather than to sell something right now. They might be also very good at it.
Fair enough. Last question from me. I want you to recommend for everyone out there a book or a learning resource which someone who's liked what you've said and wants to become more likely, wants to learn more from your sources. Can you recommend a book, podcast, anything else that they should go out and look for?
Yeah, it's a bit secondary to the topic, but I would recommend Waking Up by Sam Harris. It's more of a philosophical way of looking at life, but business is very rocky. And some days are better, some days are worse. Everything is changing very fast. So it's good to be prepared to handle these things and handle reality as a business owner.
So that's Waking Up by
Sam Harris.
Sam Harris. I will do my best to get a link down in the descriptions for whoever's watching this on YouTube or anywhere else. Jonathan, thank you very, very much for joining. I'd like to give you the opportunity now to tell people where they can find Fine, follow Fine, where they can connect with you across the internet. Mike's yours.
All right, thanks. So thank you for having me. Yeah, you can find Fine at fine.dev online. And you can connect with me on Twitter or j@finedev, and just feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Have a good day. Good speaking to you.
Thank you.